By now, most environmentalists know about the shady tactics that companies like BP and Exxon used in order to get us to blame climate change on ourselves rather than them. Unfortunately, though, while we were running around filled with righteous anger over all this, they managed to change their tactics into something even more insidious and sneaky. And I hate to break it to you, but they're still being just as successful at resisting any real progress against climate change. That's why a group came together and released this report. Their goal is to help inform the public of these new strategies so that we can be better equipped to resist them. So, let's dive into this report and figure out what their main arguments are. Hi, I'm Nathan, someone who hates when arguments leave out critical details, and this is Save Money, Save the Planet. Alright, there is one main infographic which I think applies to us peasants who aren't CEOs of social media companies. This infographic shows us the 4 main categories of climate delay, along with some examples. As we go through these examples and talk about our own, I'm sure you'll start to notice the main role that you and I can play. See, there's some lies about the climate which are very black and white because they're simply, factually, wrong. The government or social media company will have to take care of those. But all of these delay tactics also have a grain of truth to them. So they're actually legitimately good points when they're part of a well-rounded plan. But they become bad points when they are the whole plan in and of themselves. The first argument I want to talk about is redirect responsibility. This is usually when someone is claiming that we shouldn't take action yet because countries like India and China have much worse emissions than we do, so they should act first. The grain of truth here is that climate change absolutely is a global issue and needs attacked at a global scale. So, in a way, yes, we'll never be successful if China and India don't stop burning coal for electricity, even if the rest of the world runs on pure solar energy. But if developed countries like America and the EU refuse to act until China acts, and China is refusing to act until the developed countries act, well, then we all just sit around pointing fingers while the world burns. So, that won't help. And of course, all of this is conveniently leaving out the sheer number of people who live in China and that their emissions per citizen is actually significantly less than all of the developed countries. In addition, you need to remember that developed countries are much better positioned to take on leadership roles simply because we have more bandwidth. So, we could spend the next 5 years going crazy manufacturing and installing solar and wind in our own countries. Then places like China and India could benefit from the lessons that we learned so that their installation, maybe it takes half as long. If you want to understand this more, then here's a video from Not Just Bikes where they dig into this. In the end, you'll be much better equipped for when someone tries to claim that your country doesn't need to change and climate change is really all China's fault. Now, you may be hung up on how I mentioned that we can't solve climate change unless every country does their part, and because that feels impossible, you might feel that we're doomed to fail. Don't worry, that's part of the doomism argument, which we'll discuss last, so make sure you stay to the end of the video. Actually, no, screw that. I hate when YouTubers pull that crap in order to pump up their view length. Nah, let's talk about doomism now. This argument often shows up as some scientific reasoning why we can't stop climate change. The grain of truth here is all centered around the word stop. After all, scientists have officially declared that we're already feeling the effects of climate change. And you can't really stop something from happening if it's already happening. So, yeah, doomers are absolutely right. The part of the discussion that doomers often leave out, however, is that containing global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius as opposed to 2.0, 2.5, or even 3.0 C has a massive effect on what lives of future generations will look like. An analogy that really stuck with me was when someone described climate change as us being on a train which is speeding towards a massive wall at 200 miles per hour. Doing nothing and hitting at 200 miles per hour basically ensures that we all die. Slowing down to 100 turns it into a roll of the dice and maybe enables a couple of people to make it. Slowing down to 40 and putting on seatbelts, that lets the majority of the population survive and figure out a way to adapt to their new lives. And slowing down to 20 is ideal because everyone makes it. Now just take out the speeds and replace them with degrees of warming, and there you go. That's why the doomism argument doesn't deserve your attention. The intro to this episode of Factually has some great back and forth between Adam and his guest where they talk about this very topic. So, put it on next time you're looking to listen to an intelligent scientist from the IPCC talk. The fossil fuel solutionism arguments come in many flavors, but the one that I run into most tends to be some form of either offsetting the emissions from fossil fuel or making the emissions of fossil fuel so low that we can continue to burn them indefinitely. There's definitely a grain of truth here. After all, using cleaner methods to harvest fossil fuels and then capturing more of the CO2 when it's burned will absolutely lead to less CO2 getting into the atmosphere. Then using some form of carbon capture in order to suck that CO2 directly from the atmosphere, well, it sounds perfect in theory. But this argument leaves out two key things: the fact that carbon capture tech is still largely unproven, and how much more we could reduce our emissions by devoting these same resources to deploying renewable energy. Here's a fantastic graph in the IPCC's summary for policymakers. They break down all the various actions that we can take, how much they may be able to reduce our emissions, and how much it will cost us. As you can see, reducing the carbon intensity of oil and coal is very expensive for a very small benefit, while deploying solar and wind costs very little in order to achieve massive results. So, yeah, we should make sure that any fossil fuels which must be used have as low of carbon intensity as we can manage. But we also need to aggressively deploy all of the solutions on here as quickly as possible. If you want to hear more about all of this in a slightly more entertaining way, then you could check out my video where I compare proposals from the American Republican and Democratic parties. But I keep things interesting by pretending that they're in a boxing match. Check it out if you want. Originally, I was going to talk to you about the policy perfectionism arguments, but when I started typing that section of the script, well, I just didn't stop. In the end, I had 10 minutes of dialogue just about that one point, which kind of felt like its own video. So, guess which channel is going to release a video about policy perfectionism soon? What? No, it's my channel. I thought that was obvious. Well, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. While we wait on that video, let's talk about the appeal to well-being argument. Lately, I've been hearing a lot of people use this argument to bash any electrical tech which involves batteries. After all, mining for precious metals used in batteries absolutely leads to social and environmental issues in the area where this mining occurs, which is typically poorer countries. So, it can quickly feel like we're demanding that certain countries be sacrificed just so the rest of our countries can survive. But what this argument conveniently leaves out is the amount of premature deaths that burning fossil fuels is already responsible for. One study estimates that air pollution from fossil fuels is responsible for 8.7 million premature deaths per year. And that's just the air pollution. The deaths caused by having worse heat waves, which result from climate change, could make this number much worse in years to come. Now, it might sound like I'm making a lesser of two evils argument, but that's only if you assume that I'm arguing everything stays the same as it currently is, but with batteries instead of oil. That's not what I'm doing here. Because we can swap over to battery tech while also deploying other solutions like better public transit, people-centric cities, dense housing with efficient insulation, and much more. Doing all of this at the same time will result in a fraction of the social and environmental issues that our current system produces, so the world as a whole will be significantly better off. And yes, we can also aggressively pursue companies who are found to not be properly valuing the human lives in their mining locations. And if you doubt my claim that our current system is responsible for loads of deaths, then I suggest you check out this video by Climate Adam. He'll get the facts sorted out for you. Alright, Now let's talk in detail about the 72 specific different ways that this can help save you money. What? What's wrong? Good Lord, I've been talking for that long. Okay, there's no time to talk about it in depth. Suffice it to say that these conversations will come up a lot as you try to implement the tips that you find in my other videos. It might be something as small as getting a drying rack for your laundry, or as large as asking your city to build more bike infrastructure. But when you find yourself in these conversations, hopefully you can pull on these tips and resources in order to navigate the conversation successfully. Well, that's all for this month. I hope you feel ready to stop some disinformation, so get out there and go make a difference today.